Where do I even begin this morning, ladies and gentlemen? We have another jam-packed daily market update for you, and there is so much to cover in regards to what's taken place over the past 24 hours. We're going to be starting the video off by looking at Kamala Harris's proposed taxes in regards to corporation tax, capital gain tax, and unrealized gain tax. Now, this is relevant because I think crypto is going to offer some of the best ROI from an investment point of view in regards to what's going to be a generally flourishing time for risk assets. And we have to ultimately contend, certainly with capital gains tax. Somebody like myself who owns a corporation has to deal with corporation tax. I'm sure many of you do. And of course, potentially, depending on how this election goes, a dreaded unrealized gain tax, which I don't think is going to do much good. And of course, is going to have real ramifications for the markets. We'll look at a quick clip from CNBC discussing this. Then we're going to be talking about the continued onslaught from the SEC versus the cryptocurrency industry. OpenSea, a non-fungible token platform, essentially received a Wells notice from the SEC threatening to sue us because they believe NFTs on our platform are securities. We're going to be looking at what the CEO has to say about that. Then something very controversial in regards to, there was reports yesterday that 44,808 Bitcoin was essentially withdrawn from Binance over the past 24 hours. This is worth about $2.6 billion. Lots of people speculating where this came from. And there is news from Simon Dixon, who we're going to look at a tweet that says a few points on the Binance frozen crypto wallet situation. As I know the case well, and I delve into the details. It's talking about how Binance may have frozen funds related to Palestine. And also, again, we'll be very objective here and we'll look at Richard Teng's reply to this, who he's essentially coming out and saying that, look, Binance kind of operates as a bank. We have to apply by certain rules and pressures that are put upon them. So we'll be looking at that, and then we'll be looking at Bitcoin. You do have the dollar at support. Remember, we've got that broader thesis on the dollar, which is what increases global liquidity. We've got this beautiful picture setting up in regards to the cryptocurrency space. Before we get into all of this, a little bit of housekeeping. We're very, very quickly approaching 100,000 subscribers, and I want to say a massive thank you to each and every one of you that have been supporting me for as long as you have. It means the absolute world to me, and we want to do something big for charity. For 100,000 subs. I have a couple of ideas in my mind, but I also want some suggestions from you guys. If you have any suggestions on specific charities or age you think we could get involved with, do let us know in the comment section. We are going to be exploring them and ultimately doing something for 100,000 subs that we're absolutely honored to have the privilege to do. Also, in regards to my Patreon, we are at a point now where we have over 400 members, and we are going to be capping the sort of early bird Patreon access, certainly as this bull market is really about to get underway for the altcoin in the coming weeks and months. If you are looking to become a Patreon, do dive in. It's well worth the membership in my opinion. And of course, do go and catch up on last night's ad hoc meeting where we answer all the questions from the community and we look at things broadly. The altcoin market, all very positioned very well. You know, you've got stages to a breakout. One is that you break out of your base, and then there's very typically a retest, which many altcoins are currently at that position, which aligns with what we think generally is to come next for the markets. But do go and check that out. So we've got a lot to get into. We've rambled on for 3 minutes now, as we always like to do. Let's start things off with some slightly doom and gloom news in regards to some tax proposals from Harris. Now, I would say my own personal opinion is, from an outsider, not an American, I'm a UK citizen, I've lived in the UK all my life, I think Trump is better for America. That's my own opinion. And many of you may disagree with that. That's okay. That's perfect. I'm glad that we have opposing views on things, because if everybody thought the same thing, the world would be awfully boring and we'd probably have not a lot to talk about. Okay? However, there's lots of people out there that are rooting for Harris, and that is their own decision. Now, we're highlighting this from more of a market point of view, and of course my reasons for liking Trump, there's many, but one perhaps is, of course, his views on the markets, his economic views. I think they're better than the opposition's. Again, just my own opinion. I'm not here to argue with anybody. It's very interesting that we are getting reports that Harris is essentially looking to up corporation tax from 28 or 21% to 28%, capital gains tax to 44.6%. So that means when you sell an investment, you've made a profit on it, you are going to pay half of that. But anyone in the UK, the vast majority of us are already paying the higher tax bracket because we've been pushed into it. That 40% tax bracket was introduced as a super wealth tax. It's interesting how now nurses and really hardworking, honest individuals are now in that sort of tax. And then also implement something which is an unrealized gains tax, which is going to see you taxed on your unrealized gains. So if you have a position that is up £1 million, you'll give 250 million to the government. Now, I don't know whether this is going to be annually. There's lots of ifs and buts that I can't answer. We're going to stay as apolitical as possible, but there's going to be ramifications on the markets. One positive that you can perhaps derive from this, if there are any, is that, well, if they're planning on taxing people on capital gains to a higher degree and also unrealized gains, well, you can kind of surmise that they think the markets are going to continue to do well and they've got a vested interest in making that happen for tax revenue. And we know that there is a planned demolition of the fiat systems, ultimately to drive everybody into poverty. So they're taking from you from both ends. And it's not just America that is doing this. Also in the UK, we had Keir Starmer come out and say that in October, we better get ready for a very tough bill, which I can pick so many holes in. It's unbelievable. And this is what the game is all about, ladies and gentlemen. It's basically all about hollowing everyone out. Their idea of equality is everybody equally poor, and then a literal ruling class, a Pharaoh-esque kind of class over the everybody else. And they use various tools to do that. Taxation is one of them. Inflation is another one. It's a kind of tax, if you will. But this, of course, is going to have large ramifications. I had a good discussion in my Patreon, actually, about this. Lots of good views brought forward, lots of questions to be asked, lots of ifs and buts also. So is Camilla going to win? Potentially, who knows? I couldn't really say. But this would, I think, be pretty detrimental to the markets generally. But also, what's the alternative for people living in America? And I know, I'm at a stage personally where I am genuinely considering leaving my homeland because I don't think I am best served here, to be honest, and I'm fortunate enough to be able to arbitrage that. So, interesting, something to absolutely pay attention to. I want to dive over to a clip now of CNBC actually talking about this. This is posted by Caitlin Long, who I'm sure we're all familiar with. So I'm going to go ahead and mute my mic. We'll get into this clip, and then we're going to be talking about OpenSea before diving into some sort of Binance news. So I'll go ahead and mute my mic.
Unrealized gains, taxing unrealized gains just doesn't seem fair in any sense of the word. In the very best sense, if you are taxing unrealized gains, all you're doing is pulling forward the taxes that would be paid later when someone actually sells the stock.
I think that this reaction to unrealized gains is a little funny, given that I bet that the majority of people watching right now are already paying a tax on unrealized gains. It's called a property tax. When the value of your home goes up,
it's a use tax.
When the value of your home goes up, you pay higher taxes, even if you don't sell your home.
Your value of your home never moves the way a stock moves, the way something else moves.
That's always the go-to answer.
It's also, property tax is a use tax. You're paying for the schools, you're paying for emergency services. Those are things that make absolute sense.
And sure, and all the revenue that comes in from these unrealized gains taxes and the other taxes in the Harris plan are going to go to creating what she calls more opportunity. It's to make sure that every newborn born in this country gets $6,000.
Using the services.
Well, look, you're arguing that this is some sort of foreign concept that's completely unknown in the U.S. tax code.
It's probably unconstitutional. It's probably, and it was never in anyone's intent to tax.
It's not an income tax,
and it's never going to happen. Probably.
Very interesting. Lots of questions that get raised on the back end of that. I'm not convinced that we are going to see an unrealized gains tax. I do think that's very much the agenda, because ultimately the agenda is to sort of level everyone off, and this is one way that they do it, through taxation. So I want to know your thoughts in the comment section. I think, again, the world that we're moving towards is a very interesting one from a technology side of things, because it's going to replace, what does the future economy look like? And there's so much we can talk about in regards to that subject, but we'll leave that there. I want to know your thoughts in the comment section. Let's now talk about OpenSea. So this is from Devin Finzer, who is the CEO over at OpenSea, which is an NFT marketplace, essentially. OpenSea has received a Wells notice from the SEC threatening to sue us because they believe NFTs on our platform are securities. We're shocked the SEC would make such a sweeping move against creators and artists, but we're ready to stand up and fight. cryptocurrencies have long been in the crosshairs of the SEC, and companies like Coinbase, Uniswap, Robinhood, Kraken, and Consensus have been fighting against the SEC's single-track approach of regulation by enforcement. But this is a move into uncharted territory. By targeting NFTs, the SEC would stifle innovation on an even broader scale. Hundreds of thousands of online artists and creators are at risk and may not have the resources to defend themselves. So if they're saying an NFT is a security, just think about you as an artist that sold an NFT. You might be breaking securities laws without them even defining that an NFT is a security or by what standard it is deemed one. I don't like what's happening in the world right now, guys. There's a noose that is being tightened around everyone's necks, not just from a political point of view, from a financial point of view, and from a legal point of view. Anyway, NFTs are fundamentally creative goods, art collectibles, video games, and domain names, event tickets, and more. We should not regulate digital art in the same way we regulate collateralized debt obligations. Amen. As we've built OpenSea, we've heard so many stories about the impacts of NFTs on people's lives, including student artists finding full-time careers in selling their digital art, indie game developers instantly enabling open markets for their in-game items without having to build marketplaces from scratch, passionate collectors from different corners of the world joining new communities, all centered around shared digital ownership. It would be a terrible outcome if creators stopped making digital art because of regulatory saber rattling. Very interesting. Take, for example, the suit filed against the SEC, the SEC by the musician Song Something, and conceptual artist somebody else, which described their fears that this sales of their art and music could be deemed an unregistered security offering. In addition to standing our ground, we've pledged $5 million to help cover legal fees for NFT creators and devs that receive a Welsh notice. Every creator, big or small, should be able to innovate without fear. I hope the SEC will come to its senses sooner rather than later, and that they'll listen with an open mind. Until then, we'll stand and fight for the industry. Amen, guys. Let's support this, even if it's just with a like on this tweet and a retweet. There's a fight right here going on for the industry. And the SEC, I think, has done the worst job possible in regards to regulating it. They haven't protected one single investor. Luna happened, FTX happened. They're the only ones that got paid out for any of that. Absolutely shocking. And yet they're going after... For example, we're going to come on to Binance in a second. That was one of the most gangster hostile takeovers I've ever seen of a corporation. They literally threw CZ in jail and trolled him by charging him that's three all in, come on, $4 billion for basically technicalities. Let's move swiftly on again. We do have a lot to cover. So yesterday we had news just in. 44,808 Bitcoin worth over 2.6 billion have been withdrawn from Binance in the past 24 hours. You can see this is staggering, 2.6 billion. Now, let's go over to Richard Teng's comment here. So there was news. Binance under scrutiny for seizure of Palestinian crypto funds. But Richard Teng, who of course is the CEO from Binance, somebody that's more than capable of speaking on the matter, says, FUD, only a limited number of user accounts linked to illicit finance or funds were blocked from transacting. There have been some incorrect statements about this. As a global crypto exchange, we comply with international accepted anti-money laundering legislation. Just like any other financial institution, we will continue to educate users on how to safely and securely transact on our platform. Most importantly, we hope for a lasting peace throughout the region. So he's very vague about this. Is the funds that were withdrawn from Binance, does it have something to do with that? Perhaps partly. We do know that there were certain frozen accounts because Binance are ultimately compliant with sort of international money laundering rules, and definitely a something to keep an eye on. Again, we did say today there was a hell of a lot of news, and there absolutely is. And to just sort of finish things off very kind of plainly and simply, get ready for 151k Bitcoin, guys. Get ready for this bull market to really excel. Your altcoins, the only anomaly really with this bull market is that Bitcoin is way ahead of schedule in regards to all-time highs. Pre-halving, the altcoin market is exactly where it should be. It's waking up, it's breaking out. A lot of them are broken out. They've come back for a retest and we're getting ready for that broader continuation. You had Nvidia's earnings out yesterday. It came out well. The stock sold off. This is why technicals always beat fundamentals. We do have a little bit of dollar at support, so this may somewhat lean on risk. But ultimately, the dollar is in a broader downward trajectory. Targets against the dollar, Great British Pound USD, Euro USD, potentially JPY USD setting up for higher moves, which means the dollar's going to continue to come down, which means risk is generally going to do well. And the markets are very much positioned for that. So, a hell of a lot we've just covered in this daily market update, as we always do. On that note, guys, I'm going to love and leave you. If you're not already a subscriber, do consider becoming on. Remember, we are going to start capping the Patreon very shortly. We don't want to grow too much, and we've grown extensively, and we're going to continue to do so. On that note, ladies and gents, I'm going to love and leave you. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. I'll see you all in the next one.